You want to become a software engineer, but you are in a struggle, you're going through the tutorial hell, or you just don't know where actually to start. So here's my story where I will tell you how I became a software engineer from the stage when I was a digital nomad and I was living in a parents' house when I was completely poor and I was young at the same time. I hope you can take something from it. I was broke. I was living in my parents' house with my cat in a very small regional town of Russia. I just graduated from my uni. I had bachelor's degree in computer science. By the way, don't count it as a education because I didn't really study back then. It was a dream in my mind. I wanted to do what I really like to do and travel. It was a winter back then. It was very soggy and very rainy, very cold. Usually it's very gloomy period of time. Obviously, I wanted to go to some warm places like Thailand or Bali. I saw so many videos where people just traveled around Southeast Asia, they enjoyed their life. They just take their laptop and they just go to Asia and yeah, just work remotely, enjoy their life. This is where my story begins. Back then, I was doing a business on Instagram. It was completely remote. It didn't bring me a lot of income though. That's why I was wanting to try something else because I didn't see any ways how I can expand my income. At this stage, I was thinking how I can get more money. I met a guy back then who was also doing Instagram. He had a huge fan page of Jason Statham and we made our friendship based on our interests. So we hung out together a lot and we were friends, very good friends. And in one moment, this guy, he said like, oh, hey, one guy reached me out. He's from the US and he was establishing a new startup that was doing mass following and mass liking on Instagram. Back then it was okay. Instagram didn't ban any accounts and policy on Facebook. Back then it was Facebook, not Meta. That was completely fine. And a lot of businesses were doing that. I said, yeah, go ahead, try it. And that guy went to this job. He was working for a couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks. And after that, he said like, hey, Sergey, actually, do you want to try that? Because we have a lot of customers. I think your expertise is quite good and you will help us a lot. I said, yeah, sure. Why not? It was a remote position. They used to pay $20 an hour and it was completely remote. But there is one thing. It was 8 hours a day and it was 7 days a week. So no day offs, no paid leaves, nothing. It was just contract job and without any day offs. I said yes, of course. That was a good chance to earn money and go to Thailand. Of course, comparing to my previous income, it was something. It was much bigger than I used to earn back then as a business owner of some pages on Instagram. I said to my ex-girlfriend, hey, let's go to Thailand to live there, to enjoy our life, escape winter from Russia. And she said, yeah, sure, let's go. This is how I became a digital nomad. So we packed our bags, we booked tickets, we booked accommodation in Bangkok, and we just went to Thailand. We've been living in Bangkok for around 6 months and then decided to move to Phuket because we really like the ocean, palms and all the stuff. We quite enjoyed our life back then. We had a lot of good time together. We saw a lot of scenic places. Obviously, like Thailand is an amazing place to live. Like food is amazing, people are amazing, culture is amazing. So we really like this place. That is how I became a digital nomad. After living that life for a while, I realized that I need to grow as an expert and as a person. I realized that there were no perspectives at all at this job position. I won't grow, I wouldn't earn more money, and I still need to have some holidays, right? 7 days a week without days off is something. One night browsing YouTube, I found a guy who was proposing courses of developing websites, and these websites will bring the passive income to an owner. So basic idea was writing the content for these websites, do SEO and sell the advertisements on this website. I really like that idea because I was thinking that I have bachelor degree in computer science, so I could figure out how to build websites. I purchased that course and I started learning basics and fundamentals of web development. There was some knowledge of HTML, CSS, and some PHP because these websites were based on WordPress. I started learning HTML and CSS and I was surprised how I like this process. Also, I had an ambition to try to live in a Western country and I was thinking to get a master's degree as well. So I decided to challenge myself and try to study overseas. I was thinking about the country that have beautiful nature. It's going to be English speaking country with amazing climate, nice people, good perspectives in terms of jobs. So I could find employment very easily. And now we're thinking about Australia. I have applied for a uni for a master's of IT, paid tuition fee, passed IELTS from the second attempt, and lodged visa application. Meanwhile, at my job where I was working as a customer agent, things were getting very crazy and very bad. Meta, back then it was Facebook, they changed their policy regarding mass following and mass liking. So I couldn't mass follow and mass like people from any software because Meta was blocking these people. Unfortunately, the company had to close their business because the policy has been changed and they've been losing clients like crazy. I was redundant very quickly. Since I was a contractor, obviously I didn't have any further payment, no redundancy, like really nothing. At this moment, I realized that I had to find a job because I already lodged everything for Australia and I have to find an income. Obviously, life in Australia is very expensive and I had to find an income to support myself and a girlfriend. I was thinking which options I have, and I considered three of them. So option one was relying on my websites. They were bringing me around $100 a month, which is nothing comparing to living costs in Australia, even before the virus. Option two was learning web development and finding a job as a software engineer. Back then, I knew that I chose the uni in Tasmania, and Tasmania is a very, very small island in Australia, and there is no IT job. Obviously, I had to find a remote job that will allow me to stay afloat. And spoiler, that was a huge, massive deal because of, well, you know what happened back in 2020. Option three was doing nothing and just rely on a case where I will just come to Australia and find something. I'm that type of person that is looking for challenges, so I picked the second option because I knew that I had perspective with this option and I can find something reliable and stable and basically the job that I will really enjoy. It was May 2019. My program in Australia had to start at February 2020. I knew that I had 8 months with something to start my career as an IT expert. I decided to pick frontend because I already understood how to build websites based on my previous course. I already had some websites that were bringing some money to me. I spoke to some of my friends who were already into IT, and I've been asking how much time it's going to take for me from my stage of knowledge to my first job. And they mentioned about a year. They say, oh, it's unreal to get a job within 8 months. You have to forget about that. And I was thinking, hey, that's the challenge, right? So I had to be very disciplined. I had to be very motivated, and I have no step back. So I had to come up with a plan. I found a front-end development roadmap that was showing the way which technologies I need to learn first to land my first job. In terms of courses, I found very cool courses on YouTube. I found Angela Yu and she were proposing the bootcamp. It was like just pre-recorded videos on Udemy. And I also found really cool course of Zero to Master from Andre. I don't remember his last name though. I was lucky enough. I had a sale on Udemy and I paid $70 for these courses, which is really nothing. I knew that I need to learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Also, I had to understand how to resolve issues and problems to land my first job. I knew that it's going to be a very huge challenge. And I also knew that I need to be very productive and very, very efficient in terms of my time. Luckily, I came back to my parents' house, so I didn't have to spend time on my work and I could dedicate 100% of my time clearly to study web development. To be very disciplined and productive, I went to the shop and I bought the whiteboard and I put it right next to my computer and it was staying on like literally on the window. So I woke up every single day and I saw that board and I saw my schedule where I was writing like military schedule on it. So I had to dedicate at least 8 hours of study every single day to succeed. And then I started. I started watching Angela's bootcamp. She was explaining the fundamentals of web development. So it was very easy for me to understand HTML and CSS. And she started explaining also JavaScript. For JavaScript, it was a big challenge for me. I didn't remember anything from my uni. So everything was very smooth for the first time. It was like a flow state where you just sitting next to your computer, you just learn, you enjoying the process. You can't really feel the time that is going through, right? I could just sit 8 hours a day without any issues. I didn't feel tired. I was very motivated because I knew that there is no step back. I have to be very productive. I have to learn. After probably a month of hard studying, I realized that I started hating that process. I realized that I burnt out. Two things that kept me on float were my willpower and fear that I will fail and I will go to Australia without a job. That fear was very strong because I knew that Australia is one of the most expensive countries in the world, and without an income, I won't last long over there. I was very scared back then, honestly. I could not afford a loss, so I had to do something with it. I recalled in my mind how I read Arnold's biography. I clearly saw that things that helped Arnold to get through all toughness and reach his goals were routine and consistency. Based on this, I realized that I have to build a routine that will be sustainable for a long run. Unfortunately, back then there was no Dr. Huberman that is talking a lot about productivity. By the way, if you are looking for a good material of how to be productive, you can search for Dr. Huberman. He has an amazing podcast. I didn't have a clue how to be productive for a long run, so I had to come up with my own solution. I read the book Miracle Morning by Hal Arnold. In his book, he described his perfect morning routine, how he wakes up, how he doesn't touch the phone, how he meditate and go doing yoga and all this stuff. So he allocates his time for himself, and this routine is giving him a lot of energy and he's becoming very productive. Based on this book, I decided to add meditation, journaling, and reading a book. Based on that book, I decided to add into my daily routine walking outside, not touching the phone after waking up, meditation, journaling, and yoga from time to time. That's after probably a week of doing this routine, I realized one day that I wake up and I see that I'm less irritated. I have more energy and I have actually a willingness to continue studying it, because back then I liked it and now it's coming back. I realized it really worked, so I kept doing this routine every single day, and I decided to keep progressing with that routine to make it even better. As long as I was learning, I realized that keeping my phone out from my desk was one of the coolest ideas in the world. Literally, I increased my productivity with very, very simple trick. Because the thing is, when you start learning and you see your phone, you see notifications, you're being distracted. You check the notification, you respond to the message, so on and so forth, so on and so forth, and you realize that you can spend literally 2 hours on nothing. So I just put my iPhone out from my desk. I just put it on airplane mode. I put it far, far away, and I didn't check my phone like for till like 1 p.m., 2 p.m. It was very productive. Man, you can't imagine how it was productive. I didn't have any distractions. I was completely focusing on my studies. On top of that, I would say I improved not just my productivity, but my mental health as well. I realized how I am less irritated, because when I was scrolling my feed, I saw very professional, Instagrammers who were software engineers at the same time, and they had very fancy desks and all this stuff. And I was very jealous, and I was thinking that I'm not enough for this, and it drags me down. But when I stopped doing that, it improved a lot. Another trick that I did was allocating my hardest part of my job during the morning. After waking up, I had to jump straight into my laptop and did very hard work. So that after my hard work, I had completely dedicated time for myself and I didn't think about my studies at all. So I went to my whiteboard and I completely erased everything, like my military schedule routine, and I allocated 3 blocks, 2 hours each, and I had a break 30 minutes between of them. It helped me a lot to focus completely on my studies. I felt incredibly cool after completion of my study. I felt very satisfied. I felt like, okay, the job is done, so I can close my laptop and I just dedicate this time for my workout routine, for my girlfriend, for my friends, for my family, and I could just enjoy the rest of the time while the job is done. In this way, I was pushing my mind out from my routine, so my brain was basically resting during this time. After 6 months of studies, I realized that I can solve problems by myself without repeating after my tutor. I felt confident in JavaScript. I could search for a documentation for a solution. In other words, I started solving problems by myself, and this is actually why software engineers are getting paid for. So I started applying for jobs. I asked my friends in industry to help me to build my resume. Since I didn't have my commercial experience in the industry, I just put my existing websites that were bringing some income and my pet projects that I have done during my studies. And I put there just problems that I solved and which results I've got. Nothing fancy. And by the way, I never mentioned in my resume that I'm a junior software engineer and I'm looking for a junior position. I always mention that I'm a just software engineer. Very proudly saying. Since LinkedIn in Russia was banned and it's still banned, I've been using services that are alternatives to Indeed or Glassdoor in Russia. And obviously, I use these sites as well. Sometimes I apply to the companies directly. I launched my resume to them. Some people referred me. I've been applying for junior and middle positions. I've been thinking that I should be very lucky if I will pass interview for a middle software engineer position. I've been thinking that I can solve anything. My confidence were basically through the roof. It was very high. That's actually was a moment when I almost gave up because nobody replied to me. Some companies were ghosting me after my screening interview. Some HRs heard that I didn't have real commercial experience and they just, they never came back to me. After that, I was just applying. I was polishing my resume and I've been talking to HRs. I had some screening interviews, but it didn't go further. I don't remember which was the problem, but I was kept applying and I was polishing everything. I remember like 1 week, 2 week, no replies. Invitation for the technical interview. And then it was like a lightning. It was like, boom, actually, you are invited for a technical interview. I was very happy. I've started preparing myself. I Googled questions for the interview. I saw like fundamental questions about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So I prepared for this and I went to the interview. Interviewer asked some of these questions and it was very easy for me to answer these questions because I've been studying these questions for like 6 months already. It was very easy for me. And the second part was technical challenge. When HR mentioned to me that it's going to be technical challenge, I didn't pay attention on that part. I thought that okay, it's going to be something easy. I was wrong. It was my first interview. I went to the technical challenge. I remember that interviewer said it's going to be medium level questions from lead code. I remember I miserably failed. I even didn't know how to start. I even couldn't start with hints and I said like, hey, like I can't resolve that. And we finished the interview. After that interview, I went to my desk. I opened Word file and I put all questions that I were asked and I put the task that I was given and I resolved that next day. I realized that I have to prepare myself for lead code challenges as well. After a while, one company from my hometown, it was an outsourced company, they reached me out and they say like, hey, do you want to actually come to the interview? We see like your profile is nice. Things that you're doing is also nice. We saw your GitHub, we saw your pet projects, we saw your websites that are bringing income. I was curious about that as well. I went to the interview. They asked very simple fundamental questions and next day they called me and say, hey, you actually can can't go to the software engineer position yet, but we can provide you internship for a while so you can get prepared for your next job, and you will face real world project with your colleagues. And yeah, I said yes, it would be very nice opportunity for me to face real challenges, to see real world office. Yeah, I was very happy with that. I went to that internship for around 6 weeks. I've been doing pet projects, but more complicated, and I had support from my senior software engineer. It was amazing time. I've been also sharing my experience of my productivity, how I've been studying, how I've been very focusing on my work, and how I was a digital nomad. A lot of people really liked my story, and a lot of people were inspired to do so as well. I was doing that internship for 6 weeks. During this time, senior software engineer was teaching me how to build projects, how to deal with issues, and I've been very enjoying that process. I've been also sharing my stories and tips of how to be productive, how to be a digital nomad, how to work remotely, how to be transparent with teammates, and all this stuff. After the internship, it was around mid of December. I kept applying for positions, and suddenly I had a response from my one company, and they invited me for the screening. Screening went extremely nice. They really liked my profile, and they really liked recent pet project that I've done as a trainee at my current company that I've been going to. They invited me for a technical challenge. I instantly agreed, and I assigned that interview almost next day because I barely had time for myself to get a job. After the interview, next day, my PM called me and say, "Hey, you passed the technical challenge and you can pass into this third round of interview. You're going to talk to your team lead, to myself, and you just meet the team." That was a sign that they just approved my candidates. And yeah, I went to that call. They welcomed me and they say like, "Hey, this is your job offer. You can either accept it or no." They send it to me to email. I said like, "Yeah, okay, I will think about that." But but back then I was at the situation where I didn't have to think, I didn't have to negotiate, and I just accepted that job offer. And this is how I secured my first position as a software engineer. It was full remote position, and they paid something around like 12 American dollars an hour. For Russia, like especially for a regional town, that was actually fine. It took me 8 months to get my first job in the industry. I've been going through very tough challenge, and now I live in one of the most beautiful cities in the world. I live in a cool apartment. I have my awesome friends. I have my sport community that are bringing a lot of energy to me, and I'm really happy with my life. That is my story, bro. Hit the subscribe button and hit the like button if you like my story, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.